Please welcome 2019 Minnesota Teacher of the Year, Jess Davis, to sing our national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red and glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to KSQD's Talk of the Bay. I'm your host today, PK Hattis. Today we'll be continuing the Squid's coverage of the Democratic National Convention at the United Center in Chicago, where the party is in the middle of its third day of rallying around its new nominee, Kamala Harris. Santa Cruz has been well represented in the Windy City, with KSQD's own Chris Krohn and AmI Chen Mills reporting from all corners, both inside and outside of the convention center. On Monday, Chris shared a few clips of interviews that he had with pro-Palestinian protesters passionately demonstrating outside of the convention hall, reflections on the tribute to Jesse Jackson, and an interview with independent presidential candidate Cornel West. Chris, who is still in Chicago, returned to the show on Tuesday to share an interview with a Zionist counter-protester who arrived at the convention in response to the pro-Palestinian protest. And he also connected with a couple of delegates from Santa Cruz County, namely Lonnie Faulkner and Nelly Vaquero. We'll have some more clips to share again from Chris this evening, but he hasn't been alone out there. Amy arrived in Chicago on Tuesday and has been doing some reporting of her own from the United Center and is joining us for the hour over the phone. Amy, so glad you could be here.
I'm glad to be here in Chicago and glad to be with you.
Kind of were just dropped in the middle of this thing. Lots going on. It must have been a whirlwind, but just walk us through a bit what your life has been like the past few hours.
What life has been like for the past 24 hours, it's been crazy. It's been nuts. There are like 20,000 people inside the convention hall. I heard someone say there are 50,000 people just here to be a part of the parties and to be around and to be protesting in Chicago. So it's a lot. I've never been to a convention. So just to give you a sense, like I drove in on a Lyft and I was exhausted from traveling already. And we drove right past the United Center and you see these black SUVs everywhere. And some of them are those Uber, like black special things that anyone can, special rides anyone can order. But some of them have like police, lights on top, and I have police escorts or what have. So you're like, who could that be? That could be Barack and Michelle Obama, or that could be, it could be Bill Clinton, who is speaking tonight. So it is like everybody is here, and then getting into the convention center is it's a long sort of line and process. You have to have your pass, and you can't certainly just walk in. You have to go through metal detectors. You have Secret Service literally everywhere. They're everywhere, along with police, and the whole place is like fenced off. And then you have these golf carts running everywhere with volunteers just to and fro, I guess, transporting equipment or transporting VIPs. And then you go into the arena and there are all these different spaces. And no one, at least in my experience, showed up with a smile and like, hey, how can I help you?
Everyone's doing their own thing, huh?
Everyone is doing their own thing. And to be honest, Chris said, the Republicans were a bit more organized.
Interesting.
But he also said it's probably because there were a lot fewer, I think, Republicans. I mean, this is the biggest stadium in the biggest sports stadium in the United States. So there's a huge, so I've just been wandering around. Today was the first day that I actually could sort of get my bearings and get there and walk around. And there's these huge media tents and huge parking lots with ABC, NBC, big trailers, with AC and with equipment. And then these huge tents with, Newsmax is here and the Washington Post is here. And I bumped into a journalist from the Post. I said, how many people you got here? Like 20? He said, oh, no, we have over 100 people here. Mm-hmm. So everybody. If you think about it, this is the convention for the possible next president of the United States of America, one of the most powerful nations in the world. So, there are people from Australia and South Korea. There was a journalist here in the elevator of my hotel with all kinds of gear. And I said, are you the only one? She said, yes. She just looked like she was about to fall apart.
It certainly does seem like the press passes are plentiful indeed, combined with members of the public, obviously, who are showing up there, and the delegates. But the press certainly, no doubt, has a massive presence. And in fact, you had a chance to not only connect or pass by some of the more well-known press folks on perhaps some of the national stations, but I understand that you connected with some young and up-and-coming journalists from Indiana, if I'm not mistaken. Tell us about how that came to be, and I think we also have a clip here to play on the back end.
Well, I have to tell you, not everyone is super friendly. I tend to be a kind of smiley person, and I think I can be smiley with anyone, Secret Service, I don't care, politician. And so I try to smile at people, and a lot of these journalists are very serious, I'm mostly hanging out with the journalists.
Serious journalists? I have no idea what you're talking about.
I'm not going to betray any opinions or emotions. And anyway, but I tend to gravitate toward young, actually people of color, because I don't know, they just strike me as friendly for some reason. And so these were two young black, the anchor person for their news station, and I'm not recalling his name. I've met too many people. He says it in the interview, and his associate producer. And they were so excited to be on KSQD, actually, and I found them in a corner where there were a bunch of tables, and it was like catch as catch can. They won't let me into Newsmax tent, and I did not want to go. And they won't let me into Washington Post tent, because inside this big, huge tent, there are all these other tents, walled off with canvas and curtains, right? So you can't go in if you're not with that particular media outlet. And then they have desks, rows and rows of desks. And so they were outside at some tables where I was like, can I sit here? And they were like, well, we're sitting here. So I sat with them for a while.
And there we have the conversation you were about to hear. So let's hear a bit about how that went.
This is AmI Chen Mills for KSQD. I'm here at the DNC in Chicago. It's getting hot here, and I finally found a place to sit down with some other journalists and rest my tired dogs. And so I'm here with two journalists from...
Yeah, I'm from South Bend, Indiana, which, by the way, you have a radio voice. I will say that.
Well, thank you very much.
It's sensational, it really is.
Yeah, and you are like an anchor man.
Yes, I am, and I don't have an anchorman voice. That is the rarity of what I do. I don't know how.
You have a great voice, and so you guys are here, you and your news producer.
My assistant news director and I, along with our photojournalist, is here on the ground covering the story. Of course, it's the biggest story in politics right now. All eyes are on the Democratic National Convention here in Chicago.
Have you been to one of these before?
I have not covered one before. This is my first time covering one, but from the desk, I've talked about several, but to be here in this moment, and I think there's a transition happening right now. in the Democratic Party. So to be covering it as a story, it's pretty unique, pretty fulfilling, and it's an experience that I have not had time to realize and say, oh, I can take a breath and realize what I'm doing. But every day is speeding by, and that's evident that something good must be happening in the area. As people have told me on the ground, something special is happening right now. So it feels good to report on that.
Yeah, that's great. And so you said you're in the media, so we have to get that clear. You work for a TV station, and we didn't even say your name. What's your name again?
Yeah, Joshua Short, Joshua Short. Joshua Short is my name, and I'm a reporter at WNDU TV in South Bend.
And how are you navigating? This is so chaotic, and how are the other reporters too? What's the vibe with the whole media going on here? How do you feel about it?
It's so interesting because the media, all of us are on the same floor. And so it's so interesting to see who walks past us. Some of the big names in politics walking past us to go to the big networks and what have you. I think that our team has an advantage because our team, at least here at WNDU, who's on the ground in Chicago, are all from Chicago. So we know some of the secrets. We know some of the places to park. And we have gotten up very early all of these days to cover this thing because there's a lot happening here on the ground.
Yeah, it's crazy how much is happening. Have you gotten any big interviews?
You know what? I will say yesterday we were able to talk to California Governor Gavin Newsom, of course. So that was a big get. And that was impromptu. That was not planned. That's a name I know a lot of your listeners are used to hearing. So that was pretty cool to talk to him and to hear what he had to say about the direction of this party right now and the youthfulness of this party and where it's headed.
Yeah, that's so cool. Okay, anything else he said that's important for us to know in California?
No, but he's taller than I thought. I saw him and I was like, oh my gosh, he's suave and everything. The hair looks good just like it does on TV. He was really, really nice and kind enough to talk to us, and that was great. We were appreciative as journalists, of course.
Thanks so much for that segment, Amy. And I was struck in the conversation about how the convention is as much sort of for in this case, the Democratic Party sort of rallying around their nominee, building momentum and enthusiasm as we kind of head into this last stretch of the election season. But if that's the left hand, the right hand is the media. It seems like the whole event is put on for the media as much as anyone, and thus the massive presence. And one thing I wanted to ask you about is that young journalist there and TV reporter talked about kind of that interaction with Gavin Newsom, and it was kind of spontaneous. And I imagine that is the case for a lot of reporters and people where all these big names and important folks in the political sphere are intermingling, and then boom, next thing you know, you turn around and you're talking to Gavin Newsom. Have you had any kind of spontaneous interactions that have led to you talking to someone you didn't expect yourself to be talking to yet?
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, everybody's there, and it's kind of cool that way. I mean, democracy is thriving and alive. Like, we're all there. I mean, we did have to go through metal detectors, right? But it's still something to value that there are so many journalists there. Truth Out is here. There's a whole nother building that I came in to broadcast from, and they put me into this space with the TVs blasting. I'm like, this is not a good space for me to do a radio show. So then they moved me. I'm in the nursing room right now where people are supposed to come and nurse. It was the only quiet space I could find. But outside in the hallways of the arena, I walked right past Medhi Hasan, who was a former MSNBC journalist, right? One of their evening show, I think, hosts. Do you know Medhi Hasan?
Indeed, I do. I believe his new project is Zeteo, if I'm not mistaken, which launched a few months ago and seems to be really gaining momentum.
Yeah, he's got his own thing going on. And so you don't know whether you should accost them or grab them. Right. And now I know why people hold their microphones around the hallways and just shove it into people's faces.
Well, that's what they're used to doing, right? I mean, they're on the other side of it now.
I know, but he's kind of a celeb, right? So he walked past me going down the stairs as I was going up, and I thought, oh man, that was Medhi Hasan. I should ask him for a quote. I should ask him for an interview. And so then I turned around and I kind of waited at the top of the stairs thinking maybe he'll come back, and he did. And so I asked him for an interview. I'm like, hey, do you have a few minutes? But he was on his way somewhere. So I just thanked him for his good work.
Right.
So yeah, that kind of thing. Also, I bumped into Michael Cohen, who was having a conversation with this social media influencer. his name is Harry. He's like huge on TikTok, and I'm a TikToker a little bit, so I kind of know that there's a whole I know where the young people are, and some of those people were at the convention when I was doing my own little video, kind of pretending to be fancy, and they have this big lit up like background for people to do like interviews in front of, with the DNC logo behind you. I heard this yelling and screaming, and I'm like, is someone having a breakdown? Is someone sick? What's happening? And then after I got up from where I was sitting to do my own little selfie video, it was Walter Masterson. I don't know if you know Walter Masterson. Do you know Walter Masterson?
I am not familiar with Walter Masterson, but knowing you and your connections to social media, it sounds like he's kind of a big deal on TikTok.
He's a big deal on TikTok. He's a big deal on Instagram. He dresses up as like a MAGA person. He goes to MAGA and he starts talking like MAGA times 10, right? Mm-hmm. So he'll start shouting things about, we hate women, like a MAGA rally or a pro-choice rally. And so I saw him, and I love him because we've actually had him on Moment of Truth for an interview. And I think we have a clip of Walter. He actually started interviewing me, which I wasn't quite prepared for, and I don't know if that's going to go anywhere. You might see me on Instagram with Walter Masterson, but we have an interview with Walter playing his MAGA character, and a man named Michael also goes by Tizzy Ent on TikTok, Tizzy Ent, E-N-T. He has 6.5 million followers. Walter has 1.2 million followers. So if you think about it, this is like a huge, these are possible voters. And so they have a creator lounge now, for creators like this. These people have media passes and press passes and are getting down on the floor as it should be, because this is sort of like the new era.
Mm-hmm. In case you're just joining us, let me just take a quick station break. If you're just joining, my name's PK Hattis. You're listening to Talk of the Bay with KSQD. This is our live coverage all week of the DNC convention, and I'm speaking with AmI Chen Mills, KSQD's own, who is on the floor all day today reporting out to us. AmI was just describing an interaction with a couple social media sort of sensations who draw millions of views and followers on many of their videos. So AmI was kind enough to share a clip with us from that interaction. So let's roll that.
I am here at the Democratic National Convention with two of the most famous social media influencers on TikTok and Instagram, Walter Masterson and Tizzy Ent on TikTok, always calling out the fascism. Walter we're confused about because Walter has his Ultra MAGA shirt on. And so, how are you feeling as a MAGA person here at the convention?
It's terrible. Kamala released her policy today, and it's like, I want to give everyone health care. More people should own homes. And it's nothing about the free market, nothing about how much more we're going to dig for oil and fracking and, things that provide jobs and then,
How do you feel? Are you feeling a little discombobulated?
I am. I feel it's out of place here.
Yeah.
No one's waving flags and making that their whole personality.
Yeah.
There's so many different personalities and individualities here, and I don't like it.
A lot of people of color.
Well, you know how we feel about it, if you like that sort of thing, but, you should, yeah.
I'm gonna ask Tizzy Ent some questions. Tizzy Ent, you're big on TikTok, and you take things very seriously, what's happening in this country. How do you feel about the convention and the protests? Do you have mixed feelings?
No, I think the protests represent the very things that we stand for and fight for. Freedom of expression, freedom to voice our when we're not happy with the status quo or how things are going. That is the way, honestly, that it should be. If I vote for someone and then they don't do the things that they promise, I should be the first one in line questioning why not and holding them accountable for the things that they claim they were going to do. I think that's what a democracy is. That's how this works.
Are you a Harris supporter?
I am. Yep.
And how do you hold that in your mind? Because actually I am too, but I have to hold it in my mind a certain way as well. For me, it's like the world has been pretty messed up for a long time, and we take a step, and we take a step. But tell me how you feel about it, because she's in the Biden administration. The Biden administration is supporting weapons to Israel. I think $3 billion just dropped, like last week. How do you hold that in your mind?
I think that it comes down to we already know that the other side is also supportive of all those things. So there is no line in the sand as far as that's concerned. And I think there's a reason that you didn't see protests at the RNC, but you see them here. Because people knew no one was going to listen or care at the RNC. The fact that people are here protesting tells me they feel there's at least a chance. And I have to believe that there's a chance that we can work toward, in general, not just in America, bringing people together and unifying and leading toward peace and joy and hope. But that should be something that we set an example by and then push out into the world.
That was KSQD's own AmI Chen Mills speaking with a couple social media stars, sensations, sharing their thoughts about the convention. And Amy, I wanted to ask you, I kind of wanted to flip the script here and ask you the very same question that you asked in that clip, which is sort of addressing, because I know you've written about this on your social media page already, in addition to the work you're doing for KSQD. And it's about that tension that you wrote about and that it sounds like you feel between, the war in Gaza and the suffering, the immense suffering that's going on there, and sort of contrasting that with what's going on in the DNC, which is very much a party atmosphere, very much enthusiasm and joy, and those two emotions really clashing against each other. Talk a bit about how you've been handling that.
I think I've been processing that for some time now, but particularly when Harris was nominated, because suddenly there was this sense that here's someone new who could possibly be different, than Biden. And so do we have hope? Do we not have hope? I think I wrote on Facebook about how I wrote a whole book about Central Intelligence activities around the world. And to me, it's very clear that in order to continue this sort of neoliberal capitalist economy, there are certain things that are demanded, and that would be minerals and materials and extractive, activities in countries around the world, and whether or not that benefits and uplifts people or the environment or our ecology or our life support systems is not really a particular question for, the captains of our industries, our corporate leaders, our corporate oligarchy, people like to say. And we all feel that. I mean, that's something that Mega's been talking about. That's something J.D. Vance will talk about, corporate oligarchs, which is hysterical, given that, he's now a corporate oligarch himself, and so I think a lot of leftists feel like, well, this is all just a show, so that the very cynical view is this is all just a show so that we just stay calm and accept our fate and we don't rock the boat. But I guess for me, I take the longer view that I just feel like so many governments have been this way throughout the history of civilization, and if we can call it that. And so here we are. I mean, we have relative freedoms in this country that even Noam Chomsky talks about as like, freedom of the press is no joke, I mean, I am very moved to be there with journalists from a huge spectrum of an international journalist. I'm very touched by that. Everyone's there reporting. Everyone has access. Everyone can go up to a congressperson or a politician in the hallways, and ask questions. And it's not like that in a lot of countries, And so these kinds of things, the ability to organize and protest, and I know that the police come down hard on protesters. I mean, the Moment of Truth team, I think Mei Ling was sharing some information about the National Lawyers Guild put out a statement about protesters who'd been arrested, who had been shackled to the wall by their ankles and their wrists, and who had to go to the hospital because of injuries. So, it's kind of like we're holding all of it. I feel like I'm holding all of it. And I also am moved by the fact that, Michelle Obama and Barack Obama are both, people of color. And our nominee is a Black Indian mixed woman. And her husband is a Jewish white man who said in front of everyone, I left my job as an attorney to go to Washington, D.C. and support my wife. Mm-hmm. And that is like huge, and so how do these different forces play? And I'm not opposed to the protesters at all. I've covered the protests quite a bit, and I've done my own vigils, at Panetta's office as an activist, and in San Francisco. And I feel like sometimes maybe where the Democrats err is to be a little bit diffident towards the protesters or even angry about them. And we do this in our own community where we feel like that's some kind of a huge threat instead of understanding, to me, what change looks like and what activates it is all these different forces: the journalists, the protesters, the activists, the Congress people who have to make new legislation, or to change the legislation, to change the policies in order for us to change what's happening in the Middle East or here at home or whatever, So, some people are like, we're going to just burn it all down, right? And I'm like, well, I just can't. That doesn't look. How does that look? That just looks. I just don't think. I can't visualize that. Is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, we have what we have, and maybe, Kamala Harris, if she wins, it'll be 4 years, and then these fascist MAGA people will be back. I call them fascists. I think they fit the definition, and the definition is in the dictionary. So maybe we're headed that way. But I think we have a moment. We have a chance. We have to take it. That's how I feel.
Amy, thank you so much for sharing that sort of breakdown of your own internal dynamics and thinking. And, part of your action towards that, I'm sure, is going there as a reporter to bring the information back to us so we can share. Other ways folks have taken action is, as you already spoke about, protests. Protests have been happening pretty much, as I understand it, since the convention kicked off on Monday. And our own Chris Krohn has been out there doing lots of reporting on it. Chris isn't able to join us today. He is getting a much-deserved and needed break just for a few hours. But he did send us a clip from some protests that went on today. And so let's take a listen to that.
Political issue. That is why we are here today to protest the DNC and demand our own government and politicians take a stand and end the Israeli genocide.
This is Chris Krohn for KSQD Radio. I am at a protest here on Wednesday afternoon around 4:30, and there are roughly 2,000 people gathered in Union Park to protest the war in Gaza. I would say that there's more Palestinians here than I've seen before. There is a part of Chicago that is known as Little Palestine. In fact, more Palestinians live in the city of Chicago than any other city. And I'm seeing signs that say Christians for a ceasefire. Democrats fund the genocide of Palestinians. Both Democrats and Republicans have blood on their hands. End U.S. aid to Israel. End all aid to Israel. From Africa to Palestine, oppose the genocide. Defund Israel. And again, this crowd is only growing. There must be 400 to 500 police surrounding the park. There's helicopters above us.
That was K-Squid's own Chris Krohn reporting earlier today from the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, describing some of the pro-Palestinian protests out there calling for an end to the war happening in Gaza. And just hearing the helicopter and the police presence that Chris described made me think of the 1968 convention, which happened many years ago, far before I was born. But a lot of folks have been talking about the 68 convention, drawing some parallels between the protests that happened then. Has that been something folks have talked about, AmI, or do you feel that sort of tension in the air as you're there, on the ground?
I think that they've done a very good job, as perhaps Mayor Daley. I don't know what Mayor Daley had decided to do, except really come down hard on those protesters, and that created a lot of the clashes and what people were calling violence. And I never know, because sometimes people call smashing a window violence, and that's property damage. Let's be clear. The Vietnam War was going on, and our soldiers were dying, and so were the Vietnamese, and it was a lot. And again, we have Gaza, but we don't have our soldiers there, so perhaps it's a little bit more removed for most, like Americans. But the protests here, Chris is close to where I'm staying. I'm staying like 4 blocks from the event center where the convention's being held, but they have all the delegates like 4 miles away in this like McCormick Place area with different hotels and places to meet. And so the protesters are not, I don't see them here that much. They're not right around the convention center. And I think that's purposeful on the part of the city and on the part of the police. But they're probably over by McCormick. So I didn't see Chris today because I was exhausted this morning. Chris has boundless energy, I feel like. Although he was pretty tired last night. He was going to go see Jill Stein, and he said he just could not make it. So I think they're happening further away. So it doesn't feel like it's quite like in everybody's faces as it probably was in 68. And I think, the vibe was very different because I think they went into the convention with, Johnson having stepped down, and there was no nominee when they went into the convention. So it was pretty chaotic also within the convention. And, Martin Luther King Jr. was killed in April, and then Robert Kennedy was killed in June, and he was running to be the nominee. So just a lot, going on. I think a lot more going on in 68, but the parallels are interesting, right? Just kind of in a, I don't know, it's weird. It's like Nixon won, because of the chaos, and maybe, because of probably a lot of things, but maybe this is a chance to repair what was lost when Nixon won. Not, Nixon had a few good policies, but overall, what a crappy guy, So, and then, Roger Stone came out of the Nixon administration, Paul Manafort, who ran Trump's first campaign. Stone is just a complete psychopath. And who else came out of the Nixon? I don't know, but Roger Stone has a tattoo of Nixon literally on his back. And he's still with us, and he's still causing complete insanity in our politics.
Certainly a lot of characters in American politics out there, no doubt about that. I'm your host, PK Hattis. If you're just tuning in, I am speaking with AmI Chen Mills, KSQD's own, who is down there live in Chicago at the Democratic National Convention at the United Center. Has a capacity of well over 20,000 people, I believe 23,000+, and that's not even counting those that are outside. We are talking about the convention. And AmI, just on the second half of the hour here, I just wanted to ask a quick question and pose it to you, who just arrived there on the scene yesterday, kind of in the middle of things. I wanted to ask you, as somebody who has no doubt spent some time already on the convention floor, and I myself have only been tuning in on TV and some clips on social media, but what do you think it is about being on the floor, or what do you think some things might be that folks tuning in from the TV might miss about the atmosphere or the affect of being down there? One thing I wanted to call out, I'm not sure if you were there for the ceremonial roll call, if you got there in time, but I'm curious. That was fun to watch, and wondering if you experienced that and what that was like. So kind of a two-parter, but maybe they can be combined in some way. But just wondering, what do we miss when we're watching on TV?
Well, yeah, I missed the roll call, but I hear it was really emotional for people, and I missed Bernie Sanders. I would have loved to have heard Bernie Sanders. I mean, but it's pretty star-studded. I mean, we have Stevie Wonder tonight. We have Kenan Thompson from Saturday Night Live. We have a Mindy Kaling. So, yeah. And then we have some politicians, but who cares? No, we have Bill Clinton, Nancy Pelosi, Josh Shapiro. We have Amanda Gorman is going to read a poem probably. So it's, and then of course we're going to have, I think Tim Waltz is coming on. He's probably the headliner for tonight because he's like the big new rising star.
Right.
Yeah, he's the headliner, the Tim Waltz, Amy Klobuchar, Sheila E., the drummer, remember John Legend's going to be up tonight. So
right, I saw him. I heard him playing in the background of one of the media hits that somebody was doing on television. He was practicing.
Yeah. So I guess what you miss the like frazzled hecticness of like, especially if you're a media person or even a delegate, like trying to get to your seat, and I thought of that term media circus that people use a lot. It is a media circus. I mean, media is everywhere and they set up lights and, like you'll just sort of stumble onto a makeshift studio with these really bright lights and someone will be there with like huge amounts of makeup, you don't know who it is. It could be CNN, it could be Fox, you don't know. And then all the media is allowed in sort of rotation on the floor, besides the ones that probably pay to have like spaces, like CNN and the big networks. But when you're out on the floor, you don't have a seat as media, so you're kind of like getting kind of pushed from here to there. You can't. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there are places somewhere I haven't found yet. Like it's taken me this long to figure out just basically where to be, and I feel like there's more to learn, and I just have one day left.
Mm-hmm.
Let's continue because I'm just figuring this out.
It all happens so fast, I'm sure.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a little hectic, but then like I say, and people are wandering around the hallways that you recognize, either they're a media personality or I think I told you I bumped into Michael Cohen. Did I say that?
You did mention that. It must have been a trip.
Yeah, it was a trip. He looked very frazzled, actually, and like he was in a hurry to get from here to there. So I thanked him for his recent work.
Right.
Part 2 better than part 1. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, thanks for giving us a description of kind of the scene down there. I'm sure it's a lot to absorb. There's only one day, well, not including today, Thursday, things will wrap up, of course, with everything kind of coming and coalescing around Kamala Harris giving the acceptance speech for the nomination.
Can I say one thing?
Please do.
So there's a lot that happens off-site, right? Like, and as you would imagine, but I never sat down to imagine, right? So I just thought, convention, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. But there's like meetings on climate crisis, and there's like Jamie Raskin was in one with, I can't remember, someone from the squad was going to be in that one. There are like there's like a black meeting, black voters. You need to earn our vote, all kinds of like hundreds of like when I get into the schedule, it's mind-boggling. Like I can scroll for like a long time before I get past one day of scheduled meetings and events. And anyone who signs up and registers to be here in some kind of official capacity, or even probably like me, I mean, I have access to do this. I could set up a workshop and say, hey, I'm AmI Chen Mills, and I want to talk about, radio broadcasting and democracy or whatever, right? And so there's all that going on as well, and I haven't even been able to get down to McCormick Place. So I'm hoping tomorrow I'll get up bright and early, and it doesn't help that they only put decaffeinated coffee in my hotel room.
that helps no one, I can tell you that. It sounds kind of like a festival almost atmosphere out there, which I'm sure makes things exciting.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that you sadly sounds like you just missed the ceremonial roll call event, which was kind of one of the main events yesterday. Somebody that didn't miss it, I'm sure, was one of Santa Cruz County's own delegates, and that's Lonnie Faulkner. Chris Krohn, again, not with us live today, hopefully enjoying a Cubs game at the ballpark. But he did send us a clip of an interview and an interaction he had with Lonnie, I believe, sometime today.
So this is Chris Krohn at the Democratic National Convention, and I'm with Santa Cruz County Delegate Lonnie Faulkner, and we're outside of the Environmental Caucus. How is that going?
You know, it's really great to hear from some of our top leaders in this program and to know that they are on top of moving forward with the climate crisis and addressing the issues. Because, you know, many of us, for example, I'm an executive committee member of Sierra Club, and I work with the Climate Alliance and a lot of climate groups. And, you know, we've been working so hard and don't always feel that we have the folks from the top on board. But coming here and hearing from top voices and knowing that all the way up to Kamala Harris, that they are on board and ready to move forward with addressing the severity of climate crisis is very inspiring to me.
A lot about these conventions is being connected. Have you been connecting with anyone else that you could share with our audience over the last couple days?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I think from every moment you have an opportunity to connect. And, you know, from the one hand, like this morning, I got to hear Pete Buttigieg and a number of great speakers. That's not necessarily connecting, but it's hearing from really great speakers and their perspectives. But then, for example, just on my first day, I connected with a woman from Germany. I was on the bus and connected with a gentleman from Nigeria who are trying to promote democracy in African countries. And the woman from Germany, she said, you know, the world is holding its breath, waiting to see what happens, hoping that Trump doesn't get elected. A lot of people are very excited, and making the connections to do further good together, you know, that we are collaborating across, not just within the state of California, but across the United States to bring democracy and the government by and for the people.
How did you encounter Pete Buttigieg today? Where was that?
That was at the CADM. That's the California Democratic. So every morning we have a breakfast and we have a lineup of wonderful speakers. And today it was Pete Buttigieg. It was really exciting.
Who was yesterday?
Oh my gosh. I'm living on 2 hours of sleep a night. So who was yesterday? I don't know.
It's okay. Eddie, what most exciting thing you've done so far?
Oh my God, the Obama speeches last night were mind-bogglingly perfect and spot on. These are words that are just so beautiful and so necessary for the world to hear right now. And to see their love and their commitment to the United States, their capability and how much they give, it's just so inspiring.
What about Brock saying, oh my gosh, what a tough act to follow. I got to follow Michelle.
It's just beautiful. They are hilarious. They bring both the moment and this critical moment to the forefront, and at the same time drop humor in ways that just allow us to laugh and enjoy their presence.
So that was KSQD's own Chris Krohn speaking with Lonnie Faulkner, one of, I believe, 3 delegates from Santa Cruz County that are at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago this week. Lonnie was describing, sounded pretty familiar to some of the things you've been saying, Amy, about just sort of the awe of the whole experience, running into folks you wouldn't expect to be running into, listening to the Obama's speeches that were given last night. Amy, anything Lonnie said that really struck you or resonated with you or sounded familiar?
Not getting a lot of sleep.
Right.
Forgetting who you just heard.
Mm-hmm.
I've only been here for a day, or I guess about 24 hours now, actually a little less than that. And I'm already, maybe I need to acclimate or something, but it's a lot. It's a lot, you know. And I think my description of that poor South Korean journalist with 3 bags of luggage and a camera, you know, it kind of encapsulates a lot of what's happening. But I also ran into an Australian Labor Party person in my hotel lobby, and he said, Australia, we're watching the United States because a lot of the tone and the tenor of your politics begins to kind of infect our politics in either a positive way or a really negative way.
Right, no doubt, much to absorb on all fronts being there. I want to get back to our discussion earlier, which was kind of about media and about non-traditional media, which I think the Harris-Walz ticket has focused in on and given a presence to at this convention. And I believe you were able to connect with another social media sensation, if I'm not mistaken, named Alex Perlman. Could you tell us a bit about him and how that came to be, and then we'll share some of your conversation?
Well, so I found these people pretty quickly on TikTok due to the algorithms, right? Because I'm interested in politics. And Alex, he goes by Pearlmania 500 on TikTok, Pearlmania 500. And he has this red hair and a beard, and it's long. Everything's long. The beard is long. The hair is long. And he just basically yells about stuff. And it's hysterical because you know how sometimes you just feel like yelling, but you don't? Well, he yells for you. Mm-hmm. And it's nice. Funny. And he told me he used to be a stand-up comic, and I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And as we were standing there, Rod Blagojevich, I don't know,
Blagojevich, I believe.
Okay, thank you. Blagojevich, the Illinois governor former, who sold Obama's seat or something to the highest bidder back in the day, back in 2007, 2008. He was right next to us, and he had some funny words to say.
Alrighty, let's take a listen to that conversation.
Hey there, this is AmI Chen Mills with KSQD, and I found Alex Perlman, Pearlmania, on TikTok, who is hysterical. He's often known as the Ginger Yeller. Yes. The guy who yells.
Yeah.
And but you're speaking normally right now.
I am for now because I'm not really that angry. I'm actually just full of a lot of joy.
Wow.
And there's Steve King walking past us from CNN.
Okay.
But yeah.
Wait, I gotta go.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Chase him down before he doesn't have a job anymore. All right.
I saw Medhi Hasan.
You saw Medhi Hasan?
Yeah.
He's so cool. This is the biggest event I've been to, but all this last year I've been coming to more and more political events and things like that. But I do have a background in politics when I was much younger.
Okay.
I volunteered on campaigns, and I worked as a get out the vote coordinator and those things. So it's great to see a new generation, because I was back there in 2008.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And watching Barack Obama speak last night, standing with a room full of 20-year-old content creators, some of which do not remember his presidency because they're so young, made my 40-year-old knees hurt. So it's a different sea change, but I'm very happy right now.
Yeah, I am too, and I also feel guilty about being happy because of what's happening in Gaza.
Yes.
And you see these images and videos on social media daily, and then we're here. So how are you dealing with that?
So it's a difficult thing, but I think I heard Tizian say to you about there being protesters inside. I know there's a lot of protesters outside the fence, but I think that people should notice that this convention has delegates who are here, who were elected by Democratic voters in all of these different states, who are here and who are speaking their mind about this. The uncommitted did actually get to have their own panel, and that there are other people doing lobbying work here inside. I am heartened by that. The other thing that I've had in a lot of the conversations when I do speak to staffers, and I do speak to politicians in general, is to remind them the difference between September 11th, 2001 and October 7th of 2023 is that the American people now are not afraid of Muslims just for being Muslim.
Right.
But if you go think back to 2001, it was who we know, Muhammad Ali and Omar Sharif, right? That would be the only two. But I know 14-year-olds who know who Mia Khalifa is, right? If you go on YouTube, you see people, Saudi families that people know, Shah's of Sunset, all these different things. Hassan Piker is here, right? All these different people who they know. And so it's trying to actually humanize. And us seeing those images is important. And we wouldn't be seeing those images traditionally on traditional media in general. And so that is where that breakdown and how everything is getting pushed in the direction. So I'm hoping that we see a ceasefire. I'm hoping that we see conditional arms embargoes in the future, and that we see changes on our policy, not only towards Israel, but to many other nations that we are trading arms with. And a big thing for people to keep in mind is that when arms trading is happening, that is actually also, from these political and politicians' view, those are American jobs. Because the arms that they're selling are made here in the USA or designed here in the USA and all these other things. So that is part of the thing and the narrative that we have to push back on, and to remind people of what that is about and to get that advocacy.
Another interesting thing about this year's convention, I mean, I don't know what it was like in 2020. This is my first convention, is the fact that you are here.
Yes.
And Walter Masterson is here. And Michael is here. And Michael's, do you remember Michael's handle?
You talking about Tizia? Yeah.
Tizia, yeah. And so that's, I mean, and in some ways, like for me as a journalist also, I spent 6 years on staff and now sort of freelancing and doing the radio station. The mainstream media, it just has been kind of, in my mind, has failed us in terms of the Trump presidency, the ascendancy of MAGA, and calling out all the BS. And so it's refreshing to have personalities here. And so how much respect are you getting here as a TikTok creator? Because we've seen how the government and how Congress feels about TikTok. How's it going for you?
It's been going well. So there obviously with TikTok, especially with the ban coming down there, and however the movement that is going to be, there's obviously a dichotomy there that is hard, that is difficult, because the president is a member of a party, and he spoke here, and he is the man who signed it, but it was a bipartisan bill. It's something to keep in mind. Donald Trump at one point wanted to ban TikTok as well, and so there's like that. There is that where it's the U.S. government that is banning TikTok in particular. But that's not the only place where we get our messaging out there. We also get it out on Instagram. We get it on YouTube. We get it on podcasts, all these different places. The biggest thing, and I think the biggest difference, is that with traditional media versus us in our space, is that the fear for us is that someone like a Mark Zuckerberg or an Elon Musk or whoever runs Snapchat can one day decide that our content doesn't get seen anymore. There are secret algorithms out there that we don't understand, that we think we do, that this video did well because I did this thing, that can be heated. They can be turned up or turned down. Versus when you're in the traditional media, you guys are talking to your editors and your producers and the advertisers on what they want to hear. And that difference in those things, it's similar, but it's different enough where we feel like we have freedom. So I don't have a journalism background. I have an associate's degree in general studies from a local community college, but I come with 20 years of different job experiences, whether it be working in security or teaching, being a karate teacher, being a security guard, working in a bank, all these different things. Like all of that comes together, plus 22 years of stand-up comedy experience to mold me as my character.
You have stand-up No, that explains everything. So, but you also have a creator's lounge here. You have a press pass of some kind. It's called you have a press pass that says creator. Literally, he gets a special one, you guys. This one is like special. I don't even have this. It's like special. It's made out of solid gold. No, I'm just kidding. It's made out of some kind of plastic. But I guess one of my questions is they're giving you some respect. You have millions of followers. How many followers do you have?
On TikTok, I have 2.7 million. On Instagram, I'm getting near 200. On YouTube, we're trying to build that over there as well.
Wait, 200,000?
200,000, okay. Yeah, 200,000. Sorry, not 200 million. That's like a bomb.
I thought maybe just 200.
No. I mean, I came to Instagram late. I'm actually reverse on everybody else. A lot of people would have their Instagrams. I had deleted my Instagram in 2017 due to privacy concerns and a lot of hatred that I had towards things that Facebook and Meta have done over the years, including cook a lot of our family members' brains and push them towards MAGA and other things. So I decided in 2017 when I retired, quote unquote, retired from stand-up, I stepped away. I stopped performing, and I went and got a day job and was working, once I was at a customer service job. And when TikTok took off for me, it was when I was no longer front-facing customer service. I went back office. Roe v. Wade got overturned, and I started yelling in my phone. And before I knew it, I had 50,000 followers overnight.
And he hasn't stopped yelling since, folks. He literally has not stopped. And I worry for him. I want to get him some throat coat. But do some of these Congress people recognize you that you see?
Not so much the Congress people, but their staff.
Of course not.
Yeah, the staff, though. Actually, this is the first time where Secret Service agents have recognized me.
Oh, that's cool.
Now, because usually when I've been at an event where Secret Service is, or state police, they typically tell me that they because of state and federal bans, they're not allowed to have TikTok on their devices. However, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter are not banned. So they might know you on social media from those things if you've been reposted. But when I was having issues trying to get my credentials to get in this building with my special little pass of gold, I was stuck in like a catch-22 like feedback loop line. And that catch-22 feedback loop line, the Secret Service agent went, my wife watches you on TikTok a lot. He's like, I enjoy your content. And I was like, so you know I'm a content creator. Please let me across the sky bridge for my badge.
Very cool. Any special things that have happened for you? Funny things, people you've run into, crazy things?
Not me. Okay, so one thing they did let me on the floor for a second. And I was out there and I was trying to record a collaboration with a friend who I'd never made content with before. And actually, a lot of the content creators here I'd never actually met in person before. So it's been really cool to see them and kind of talk shop, because much like journalists, we get to talk about how it is to get press credentials and do all these different things. Like, we can all like talk about what it is to deal with crazy comment sections or bans or any of these other things. We're talking shop.
Yeah, so it's like it's a professional. It's a guild.
Yeah, it kind of, and I hope we get a union someday. And part of what was interesting was we were out there about to record, and all of a sudden Stevie Wonder walked out and did a sound check. So I got to see Stevie Wonder practice Higher Grounds with a full band twice.
And
so I turned my phone on real fast and like turned it around. It was like, we're trying to cut, and it was great. And honestly, it's not doing well review wise, because it's not me yelling at home behind my desk where people are used to me. So like, there is actually me being here. It doesn't actually do as well as me being at home. And there is that divide there. And when you look at some of the news content creators in general, you wonder how many of them are doing like many of the traditional media here does. Are they reframing AP? Are they reframing an NBC and all these different things? So, I mean, we still need traditional media. We don't need people with training. We still need people like you who have the experience, and everyone at your radio station who have the experience to be out there and doing these things. So that way it can help us to help people and to advocate and to do those things. And I think the biggest thing I've been like, and the hardening I've been having, especially when it comes to Gaza and everything that's been happening there, is how it's one thing that all the content creators have been talking about together. All of us have been talking about it, and how do we make the change? How do we advocate on that side of things? And how do we, when we talk to these politicians, when we get that minute, when do we make that push? And then the debate there is, if you want to be flashy and get views, do it on camera. And if you actually want to make them understand the difference, is having that making it conditional.
And are you having conversations with, do you get to talk to Congress people? Do you have some access?
I'm trying to.
Yeah, I mean, you have so many followers. That's like a constituency for them. And I think they need to really take us seriously. And by us, I mean, I'm on TikTok too, but people who are reaching out to young people, right? A Pearl Mania on TikTok.
Pearl Mania 500.
I was afraid you wouldn't have anything to say.
That's very funny. The last thing I'll say, though, is to remind everyone, though, about journalism versus news content creators and everything else, is that the entry level to become a viral star on anything on social media is the price. There's Rod Blagojevich. Is the price of a cell phone plan. No, that's like the former governor of Illinois who Trump pardoned.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
He's an interesting looking character.
Yeah, I think he's a bag of shit. But yeah, he was the one who sold Obama's seat. And he got arrested and went for corruption, I think.
Heavy on the makeup.
Say again?
Heavy on the makeup.
Heavy on the makeup, yeah. But to what I said at the very end there, the barrier for entry to do what I do is to have a cell phone plan and a camera and an internet connection. Yeah. It is not as high as having to have a full studio or a journalism degree or any of these things. And so there is a danger there. There is a danger there because anybody can get on in that way and anybody can frame the narrative. And it's something for politicians to keep in mind, but also especially for the general public, is to understand the bias of where you're getting your information from, because there's a lot of people from talking around, people have agendas, and just try to Try to learn. And then the last thing is don't quote tweet people you don't like. Just block them. They live on views. They get paid by the view. You commenting, you're an asshole and you're a liar and you're any of these things, you just paid the man.
Alexander Perlman, thank you so much for your work. It's amazing, and I'm so happy to have met you.
Thank you.
So that was just Amy's conversation with Alex Perlman, a social media sensation, one of many non-traditional media sources at the DNC this year.
It's interesting that I would recognize them before. Like, I can't tell the difference between one CNN person and another, but I can totally hone in on Walter Masterson,
Right.
or Alex Perlman. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, I think that's a great point, and that's probably, in fact, why they're there. I'm sure there are many, especially younger folks, I'm sure at this convention, that's the experience for them. I mean, Alex sort of touched on that too. He said the Obamas gave their speeches, and I'm sure it was well received by everyone, but there's a lot of media folks there, TikTok stars and the like, who maybe didn't even experience directly that presidency. And so that's kind of a flip, if I'm not mistaken, in how these conventions come together. And Alex is sort of part of that.
Yeah.
So we just have a few minutes left here, Amy, and it sounds like you've been extremely busy, not much sleep, trying to get your bearings. It's a whirlwind. I felt like I had to ask this, which is the following. Chicago is notoriously a foodie town. There's no short supply of restaurants. Have you had a chance to get out to a delicious restaurant or enjoy some sort of delicious meal somewhere? And if you did, tell us about it.
I went to Northwestern, which is just north of, it's like on the L line, right? Just north of Chicago. And some of my girlfriends are going to take me out to a nice place, I think, on Friday evening. And I've been trying to find it in my text, but it might take me too long to find it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So in any case, thanks for sharing that lighthearted note. It's been a busy convention and a lot of interesting dynamics to dissect. I appreciate you.
Oh, I found the restaurant.
Oh, please give us a shout out here
it's
before we go.
Sifr, SIFR. Look it up. I hope it's good. I don't know if they're treating me, so I hope it's not too expensive, and we'll see.
Indeed, we'll see. I hope you'll report back to us, Amy, on how that goes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for all your work and for sharing your thoughts here in the hour that we had. It sounds like you'll be there for continued coverage tomorrow, and KSQD will certainly continue our coverage tomorrow, the last day of the Democratic National Convention, where Kamala Harris will be nominated and give a speech at some point in the evening. Thank you so much for listening to KSQD's Talk of the Bay. I've been your host today, PK Hattis. Tune in again tomorrow for more continued coverage of the DNC. Until then, take care and be well. Thanks so much for joining.